Welcome to the audiobook cut for Atomic Habits by James Clear, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. In this cut, we will summarize the book and pick the main points such as habit tracking, stacking, and the 2-minute rule, so you can efficiently benefit from the expert guidance given in the book. The book cover jacket for this bestseller states, "These small changes will have a transformative effect on your career, your relationships, and your life." Sounds good. Let's get into it. Part 1. It's remarkable how much influence even the smallest of habits may have over your life. To get us started, I want you to picture an aeroplane taxiing to the runway in Los Angeles so that it can take off. New York City is where the aeroplane is planning to land. Following the pilot's entry of all the pertinent data into the aircraft's onboard computer, the aircraft is then able to lift off and fly the desired course. Imagine, however, that not long after launch the pilot makes an error, a little adjustment to the flight route that was planned. The angle merely shifts by 3.5 degrees, which is hardly noticeable. Nobody, not the pilot, nor the passengers, sees anything as the airplane's nose moves ever so slightly as it glides through the air. But the result of this seemingly little adjustment would have a significant bearing on the whole trip across the United States. At the conclusion of their trip, the pilot and passengers would find themselves landing in Washington, District of Columbia, rather than New York City. The pilot would be even more bewildered than the passengers. So, why share this information with you? This is because, just like the bewildered pilot, we fail to see subtle shifts in the circumstances of our life. The immediate effects of making minor adjustments are essentially nothing. Even if you go for a jog that lasts for 20 minutes today when you are out of shape, you will still be out of shape tomorrow. Even if you eat a pizza large enough for a family for supper, it won't cause you to gain weight overnight. But if we keep doing these seemingly little things day after day, the choices we make will eventually add up to significant outcomes. If you eat pizza every day for a year, you will most likely have acquired a significant amount of weight at the end of the year. If you run for 20 minutes every day, you will gradually get leaner and more fit, even if you won't be able to detect any changes taking place in your body. The most important takeaway from this is probably already clear to you, and that is that seemingly insignificant habits may have a surprisingly significant influence on your life, even if you do not always see these changes taking place in real time. After some time has passed, only then will you start to see the effects of your habits. Now, we are aware that it is possible to be disheartened when you do not see the results of your work. If this is something that is happening to you, if you are feeling disheartened by the lack of quick positive change, then it is crucial to attempt to concentrate on the trajectory you are on rather than the outcomes you are currently getting. Consider for a moment that you have a limited amount of cash in the bank. However, you are putting something aside every month. It's possible that your present results aren't all that impressive, especially considering how meager your nest egg currently is. You, on the other hand, can be certain that the path you are on is the correct one. If you keep moving in this route, you will see a significant difference in a few months or a few years' time, depending on which you choose. When you get discouraged because it seems like you're not making any progress, remind yourself that you're really doing the correct things and that you're on the right path. But how exactly do you put yourself on the path that will lead to success? You will need to cultivate particular habits. The formation of habits involves the acquisition of automatic behaviors from previous experience. When you come into a room that is dark, your first inclination is to reach for the light switch rather than to think about what you should do next. The act of reaching for a light switch is a habit, which may be defined as a pattern of behavior that has been performed so often that it is now performed without conscious thought. This kind of routine permeates every aspect of our life, from the act of brushing our teeth to the way we drive our cars. They possess a tremendous amount of power. But how do they come into being? A psychologist by the name of Edward Thorndike attempted to find the solution to this issue in the 19th century. The first thing he did was put a few cats into a black box. After that, he timed how long it took them to escape. To begin, the behavior of each cat when put within the box was just what one would anticipate it to be. It searched fruitlessly for a method to get out from there. It probed the edges with its nose and paws, and it scratched the walls with its claws. In due time, the cat would discover a lever that, when pulled, would release a door and allow it to flee the room. Thorndike then repeated the experiment by placing the cats that had previously been successful in escaping back inside the box, and observing the results. And what exactly did he uncover? Each cat eventually figured out the trick after being placed in the box a few times. The cats did not waste time scurrying about, rather, they headed right for the lever. After 20 or 30 tries, the typical domestic cat will finally escape in about 6 seconds. In other words, the procedure of exiting the box had become a habit for the cats. Thorndike had made an important discovery as a result of his experiment. He found that behaviors that result in pleasing results, in this instance obtaining freedom, tend to be repeated to the point where they become automatic. In the decades that have passed since Thorndike's experiment, several new insights about routines have come to light. Now that we know more, we can identify 4 separate components that make up habits. To begin, there is the CUE, also known as a trigger, to act. You are given a prompt to do an activity that will enable you to see when you enter a room that is dark. The next step is a craving for a transition, in this example, away from the darkness to the light. After that follows a response also known as an action, which is turning the light switch on. The reward is the very last stage of the procedure and the goal of every habit. In this instance, the light brings about a sense of relief and comfort in being able to see your surroundings. The same pattern underlies each and every habit. Do you have a cup of coffee first thing in the morning? The moment you open your eyes is the cue that sets off a craving to feel aware and fully awake. The response is that you force yourself out of bed and prepare some coffee. The reward is feeling fully alert and prepared to take on the challenges of the day. Now that you have a general understanding of how habits operate, let's take a look at how you may cultivate positive habits that can bring about positive changes in your life. Developing new patterns of behavior entails having a game plan and using indicators that are difficult to ignore. The formation of habits has just been brought to our attention. Let us review this in a nutshell. A cue is a trigger that encourages you to act, a craving is a want that you want to attain, a response is the action of the habit itself, and a reward is the happy feeling that you receive from completing the habit. These 4 components make up a habit: cue, craving, response, and reward. As soon as you understand how they function, you will be able to begin to hack the process of habit formation in order to make healthy, useful routines more permanent. Let's assume you absolutely cannot wait to start playing the guitar. You have your instrument, and you learn the fundamentals, but you're having trouble keeping up with your practice schedule. Every morning when you wake up, you promise yourself that you'll take up your guitar later in the day, but by the time the sun sets, you realize that you haven't even touched it once. You may put your newfound knowledge to good use now that you are aware of the components that contribute to the formation of habits. In this scenario, you want to make it impossible to miss the prompt to take up your instrument. Keep your guitar out in the open and in plain sight by putting it in the center of the living room rather of hiding it away in a closet, or tucking it away in a corner of the spare room. It will be much simpler for you to transform your desire to practice into a habit if you make your cue apparent and impossible to ignore. If you want to refine your triggers even more, you can use something that is known as implementation intentions. Changing your surroundings to place your cues front and center will help, but if you really want to realize a goal, you can utilize implementation ambitions. So then, what are these things? When it comes to developing healthy routines, the majority of us have a tendency to be overly hazy about our goals and objectives. People often make resolutions such as, "I'm going to eat healthier," or "I'm going to learn guitar." And all we can do is pray that we will really carry it out. We may advance beyond the general purpose with the assistance of an implementation intention. They are the beginning of a detailed plan of action. They assist you in determining when and where you will engage in the habit that you want to make a part of your life. Okay, let's return to our guitar example. Instead of telling yourself, "You're going to practice guitar sometime this week," try telling yourself, "When the alarm goes off on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the first thing I'll do is pick up my guitar and practice for 1 hour." This will help you stay more accountable to your goal of practicing guitar. Also, don't forget to position your guitar so that it faces the center of the room. By developing an implementation intention, you will provide yourself with both a distinct strategy and an obvious cue. Also, the ease with which you will be able to develop a constructive habit may come as somewhat of a surprise to you. Let's stop for a while and take a breather while we continue our investigation here. You could be thinking that all of this seems fairly realistic, but you might also be questioning whether or not it is really effective. Is it possible for me to change aspects of my surroundings to make it simpler to develop healthy routines? It seems promising on paper, doesn't it? But in practice? In order to provide an answer to the issue, let's have a look at the work done by Anne Thorndike, who is a physician located in Boston. No relation of the cat-loving Edward Thorndike, in case you're wondering. Dr. Anne Thorndike had a challenge that is common among medical practitioners. She wanted to assist her patients in enhancing both their diets and their habits towards eating. But she was also aware that it might be challenging to make the choice to eat better on a conscious level. It requires a significant amount of self-control and self-discipline, and unfortunately, not all of us are blessed with an infinite supply of self-control and self-discipline. Consequently, Anne Thorndike and her associates conceived of a test. She reorganized the hospital cafeteria as a part of the experiment that she was doing. The soda that was stored in the refrigerators that were located adjacent to the cash registers was switched out for bottled water, and baskets filled with bottled water were strategically positioned all throughout the cafeteria. Following that, Dr. Thorndike and the rest of the team waited to see what would occur. And what do you suppose ended up taking place? As a matter of fact, over the course of 3 months, sales of soda dropped by 11% while sales of water skyrocketed by over 25%. Dr. Thorndike and her colleagues were successful in encouraging individuals to choose the more healthful decision simply by increasing the number of opportunities for them to drink water. In other words, they were able to assist individuals in the formation of improved habits, without necessitating that the individual makes a deliberate choice to do so. There is much evidence to suggest that modifying your surroundings might assist you in developing healthier behaviors. Part 2. Because humans are driven by the prospect of reward, making habits appealing will help you stay to them and will increase the likelihood that you will stick to them. Now is the time to discuss the benefits of developing good habits, so let's get started. An investigation into the psychological and physiological underpinnings of desire was carried out by neuroscientists James Olds and Peter Milner in the year 1954. They did this by inhibiting the release of the neurotransmitter dopamine in a few of the rats by using electrodes. The findings came as a complete surprise. It seemed that the laboratory rats had simply lost the desire to survive. They had no urge to eat, drink, breed, or engage in any other activity since dopamine was absent from their bodies. They all succumbed to thirst only a few days later and died. One thing stands out to us after reading this somewhat unsettling account: dopamine is an essential driver of behavior. When we engage in behaviors that are advantageous to our continued existence, such as eating, drinking, or having sex, dopamine is produced, and we experience a pleasant sense of well-being as a result. This enjoyable sensation serves as a powerful incentive for us to carry out the good activity again and again. Everything seems okay up until this point. But what does any of this have to do with the process of developing habits? Doing the action that gives us pleasure is not strictly necessary in order to experience the effects of dopamine. It is not even necessary to actually carry out the joyful activity for the brain to start releasing dopamine. Within the framework of the brain's reward system, having a desire for something is on par with actually obtaining it. The good news is that we can use this to our advantage. If we transform the process of forming our new routine into something that we look forward to, we will be far more likely to carry it out and make it a permanent part of our lives. We'd want to explain the notion of temptation bundling to you at this point in the conversation. When you engage in temptation bundling, you combine a behavior that you consider to be vital, but undesirable with another behavior that you engage in because you find it enticing. When forming a new routine, you may put dopamine to work for you in this way to maximize your chances of success. Take for example the instance of Ronan Byrne, an Irish student who is majoring in engineering. Ronan was well aware that he needed to do more exercise, but he found that his workouts provided him with very little pleasure. Having said that, he did take pleasure in watching Netflix. Therefore, Ronan modified a stationary bicycle. He then connected the bike to his laptop, and built some programming that would only enable Netflix to run if he reached a specific speed when he was pedaling. The unpleasant task of working out was turned into something he looked forward to by associating it with an activity that he was already inclined to engage in. To implement this into your own life, you do not need to devise some elaborate machine that combines watching Netflix with exercising on a stationary cycle. There are methods that are less complicated than this one. For instance, if you know you need to exercise but also want to stay up to date on the most recent A-list rumors, you may make it a point to read magazines only while you're at the gym. Or, if you want to watch sports but have to make sales calls, Promise yourself a half hour of ESPN after you speak to your 10th prospect. This will allow you to satisfy both your needs. Simply find a method to make those unappealing but vital jobs enjoyable, and you'll be able to ride a wave of dopamine, while also building beneficial habits. If you want to create a new habit, you should make that habit as simple to incorporate into your life as you possibly can. Adding some fun to a routine is a tried and true method for ensuring its continued success. Making the process of forming habits easier for ourselves is another way we might hack it. Our lives are dominated by behaviors that are easy. We waste time by mindlessly scrolling through social media or eating our way through a bag of potato chips, since these are both simple activities. On the other hand, doing 100 push-ups or learning Mandarin are both activities that are rather challenging and need a significant amount of work. Because of this, neither one of us feels particularly attracted to engaging in strenuous physical activity, or learning a new language in our leisure time. If we make the actions that we want to see more of in our lives as simple as we can, we will have a better chance of turning them into a habit. The good news is that there are a number of different methods in which we can make this happen. The first method is to lessen the amount of friction. James Clear has never been very good at sending out birthday and holiday cards. However, his wife never misses an opportunity to send a card. And there is a perfectly reasonable explanation for this. At home, she has a box of greeting cards that are already arranged in accordance with the occasion. By doing just a little amount of preparation ahead of time, it will be much simpler for you to convey your sympathies, congrats, or anything else may be appropriate. When someone she knows gets married or starts a new job, she does not have to go out and get a card to congratulate them. As a result, there is less friction involved in sending a card. The action of friction may go in either direction. You can eliminate a poor habit by increasing the friction in your environment, but if you want to develop a positive behavior into a habit, you may lessen the friction in your environment first. Therefore, if you want to spend less time in front of the television, you should disconnect it and remove the batteries from the remote control. This will provide sufficient friction to guarantee that you only watch when you have a genuine desire to do so. That would be friction, then. The so-called 2-minute rule is the second strategy for simplifying the maintenance of a habit throughout the course of its lifetime. Any new endeavor may be made to seem more doable by using this strategy. The fundamental idea is that any pattern of behavior may be condensed into a habit that can be performed in under 2 minutes. Do not make the commitment to read one book each week if you want to increase the amount of reading you do. Instead, make it a routine to read 2 pages every night before bed. Alternately, if your goal is to complete a marathon, you should make it a habit to put on your running clothes immediately after each workday. The 2-minute rule is a method for developing readily attainable habits, which are small successes that may pave the way to more significant achievements. After lacing up your running shoes and giving them a little tug, you'll almost certainly go for a run. After you've read the first 2 pages, you'll probably keep going. The first and most critical step towards doing anything is to just get started. It is crucial to successful behavior modification to make any changes to your routine such that they are instantly pleasing. Now it brings us that much closer to the conclusion. But before we wrap this up, we want to share with you a tale, the story of Stephen Luby, a public health researcher who achieved a lot of success in his career. During the 1990s, Luby had a job in a district of Karachi, Pakistan, and he was quite skilled in his field. A staggering 52% fewer youngsters in the area suffered from diarrhea as a direct result of his efforts. In addition to this, he reduced the incidence of pneumonia by 48% and the rate of skin infections by 35%. So, what exactly was his hidden agenda? Nice soap. Nice soap was the driving force behind many of Luby's significant contributions to the field of public health. Luby was aware of the significance of fundamental hygiene practices like washing one's hands in order to prevent the spread of disease. The locals were aware of this fact, however, they were not making use of their knowledge to establish a habit. Everything shifted in a new direction when Luby collaborated with Procter & Gamble to provide a high-quality bar of soap to the community at no cost. Overnight, washing one's hands transformed into a pleasurable activity. The new soap worked well in the lathering machine and had an enticing aroma. It seemed as if everyone was washing their hands all of a sudden because it had become a pleasant activity. The case of Stephen Luby exemplifies the last and most crucial guideline for changing behaviors, which is that the changes need to bring about satisfaction. It might be challenging to find ways to make positive behaviors enjoyable. This is a result of the evolution of humans. We are now living in what is referred to as a delayed return environment. You report to work today, but the reward in the form of a paycheck won't be given to you until the very last day of the month. You start your day by going to the gym, but you won't see results from your workout right away. Unluckily, the human brain was designed to function best in situations with constant feedback. Our remote ancestors did not give much thought to matters of long-term investment, such as setting money aside for retirement or maintaining a healthy diet. They were preoccupied with matters of the present, such as securing their next meal, finding a safe haven, and ensuring that they were vigilant enough to evade any saber-toothed tigers that may be in the area. This fixation on short-term profits may lead to the development of unhealthy routines. It's true that smoking increases your risk of developing lung cancer in the long run, but in the here and now, it helps reduce tension and satisfies your need for nicotine. The short-term high you get from smoking is probably going to outweigh the potential negative effects on your health in the long run. The takeaway from this is that if you want to develop habits that will pay off in the long run, you should look for ways to combine them with activities that provide instant satisfaction. The simplest way to illustrate this would be to use the examples of a couple that the author is familiar with. This couple wanted to improve their health, lower their expenses, and dine at their home more often. These are long-term objectives with uncertain payoff. They decided to create a savings account with the name Trip to Europe, so that they could get an instant boost to their investment and help move their goals forward. They deposited $50 into the savings account each time they ate in their own homes rather than going out to eat. The instant pleasure that they need to keep them on track for the ultimate, longer-term reward was supplied when they saw $50 arrive in that savings account. This gave the short-term satisfaction that they needed to keep them on track. So, we can build new habits, but how can we make them stick? Habit tracking is a simple method that may be used to help new routines become permanent. Keeping track of one's habits has shown to be successful for a large number of individuals throughout history. Benjamin Franklin is one of the most well-known of these people. Franklin began keeping a journal at the age of 20 in which he tracked his devotion to a list of 13 personal values. These characteristics included avoiding idle chat, and constantly being productively engaged in some activity as goals to strive towards. Franklin would keep a log of his progress in each domain on a nightly basis. You may take a cue from Benjamin Franklin and monitor your habits in a similar fashion by utilizing a simple calendar or journal and marking down each day that you successfully maintain your preferred behaviors. You'll discover that it's useful since the process of documenting habits is itself a habit that's appealing and rewarding. The prospect of marking off each day as well as the action of doing so will make you feel good and will keep you motivated. The next step that I suggest you do is to create a habit contract that includes negative penalties to be incurred in the event that you do not remain on track. Brian Harris, who hails from Nashville, is an entrepreneur, and he followed the terms of his habit contract extremely seriously. In a contract that he, his wife, and his personal trainer all signed, he made a commitment to reduce his weight to 200 pounds. He was able to zero in on certain behaviors that would propel him towards his goal. These included keeping a record of the food he consumed each day as well as his weight once every week. After that, he established consequences for disobeying such conditions. If he did not record the amount of food that he consumed, he would owe $100 to his trainer. If he did not weigh himself, he would owe his wife $500. The tactic was successful because he was motivated not only by the fear of losing money, but also by the fear of losing face in front of two individuals who were important to him. After all, people are more sociable than other animals. We are sensitive to the judgments of people who are close to us, and the mere awareness that someone is keeping an eye on us may be an extremely effective spur to action. Why not make a deal with yourself to form healthier habits? You should think about making a promise to your significant other, your closest friend, or one of your colleagues, even if it won't be as specific as the one Brian Harris made. You will be far more likely to maintain your routines if you come to an agreement on a set of penalties to face in the event that you fail to follow through. And as we've seen, maintaining healthy habits, no matter how little it may seem at first, is a proven method to accomplish significant goals in life. A little adjustment in how you behave will not cause a dramatic shift in your life right away. But if you make that action into a habit that you carry out on a daily basis, It will unquestionably lead to significant changes in your life. To transform your life, you do not need to have major breakthroughs or completely overhaul the way you live your life. Rather, it's about developing a good set of habits that, when put together, lead to exceptional outcomes. One last thing, when trying to do something new, use habit stacking. If you want to establish a fresh habit in your life, one strategy you may use is to stack it on top of an existing habit. Let's imagine you're interested in beginning to meditate but are having trouble fitting it into your schedule. Consider some of the activities you do automatically on a daily basis, such as getting a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. After then, just stack the new routine on top of the old one. If you want to build on the natural momentum that comes from a habit you already have, a good strategy is to make a commitment to meditation every morning after you've finished your coffee, or reward yourself with a coffee for completing your meditation. That's the end of this audiobook cut. Thanks for listening, and good luck.